All right. Have you ever heard of someone just refusing to follow a court order? Like completely ignoring it?
Not really,
For
no.
over a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it sounds wild, right?
That's pretty bold. You don't really hear about that very often.
But that's what happened in this case we're going to be looking at today.
Okay.
It's a viral Supreme Court case, and it's really something else.
All right, I'm intrigued. Let's hear about it.
All right, so it's Roberto C. Eusebio versus Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
It's GR 223623.
Got it.
And it was decided on January 29, 2020.
2020.
So this case is about like a power struggle between a mayor and a university president.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it all started with an appointment.
Uh-huh.
So Roberto Eusebio was the mayor of Pasig City,
Okay.
and he appointed a woman named Rosalina V. Tirona to be the president of Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Pasig.
Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Pasig.
Yeah, it's usually shortened to PLP.
Okay.
So initially everything was fine.
Yeah.
The Civil Service Commission, which is often shortened to CSC, they approved this appointment.
Makes sense.
And she started her 4-year term.
Okay, so far so good.
But then Eusebio got reelected.
Mm-hmm.
And he did something that's actually pretty common in the Philippines. He requested courtesy resignations from everyone.
Everyone.
From all the city officials, including Tirona.
Oh, interesting. So like a clean slate kind of thing?
Yeah, basically it's a way
Yeah.
for the new administration to, appoint their own people.
Right, right.
But these resignations aren't always accepted.
Hmm?
And officials aren't obligated to resign.
Of course, of course.
So in this case, Tirona decided not to resign.
Okay.
And she had valid reasons.
Yeah.
But Eusebio wasn't happy with that.
Uh-oh.
And he decided to terminate her appointment.
What?
Yeah, he claimed that she had reached retirement age.
Oh, so he kind of tried to force her out.
Exactly.
What did the CSC say about that?
Well, they reviewed the case.
Oh, okay.
And they determined that his claim about her retirement age was just not true.
Oh, wow.
So the termination was completely illegal.
So what did they do?
They ordered Tirona to be reinstated as president of PLP.
Okay, makes sense. So back to her original position.
Yeah, and this order wasn't just like a suggestion or a recommendation. It was immediately executory.
Immediately executory.
Yeah, which means he was legally obligated to comply with the order right away.
Right. So no waiting, no delay.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But that is not what happened.
Oh, no. What did he do?
He just completely ignored it. He refused to reinstate her.
Wow. He just flat out ignored a court order.
Yeah.
That's pretty unbelievable.
Look at that, right?
What?
It's such a bold move.
Like, what was he thinking? Did he think he was above the law or something?
That's a really good question. It's unclear exactly what his motives were, but it seems like he was just determined to have her removed from her position.
Wow. Regardless of what the CSC said.
Yeah, and what's even more fascinating is that he didn't even try to, legally pause the reinstatement while he appealed or anything.
He didn't even try to get, like, a temporary restraining order or something?
Nope. He just decided to ignore the order completely.
So what happened? How did the CSC react to this?
Well, as you can imagine, they weren't too happy.
I bet.
They saw his actions as a direct challenge to their authority,
Right.
and they decided to take action.
Okay, what did they do?
They initiated indirect contempt charges against him.
Oh, wow. So they didn't mess around?
No, they didn't.
Mm.
So contempt charges. Those are serious business now.
Yeah.
And he could have faced jail time.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
But the CSC decided to go a different route. They hit him with a hefty fine.
A fine. Okay, how much are we talking?
Well, for every day that he defied their order, he had to pay P1000.0.
P1000.00 per day.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Per day.
Oh, per day.
Yeah. And remember, this defiance went on for over a year.
Oh, my goodness. So we're talking about some serious money here.
You do the math. The total fine reached P416,000
Wow, that's a huge amount.
It is. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So I can see why this case went viral.
Right.
People were probably shocked by that fine.
I mean, it does seem excessive at first glance.
But it wasn't just a random number they pulled out of thin air.
Oh, boy.
It was based on the CSC's revised rules on contempt.
So it was all according to the rules.
Exactly. And there was legal precedent for it.
So it wasn't just the CSC trying to make an example out of him.
Right. It was a calculated decision based on existing rules and regulations.
Interesting. So what was Eusebio's reaction to all of this?
Well, he decided to fight back.
Of course he did.
And he took the case to the Court of Appeals.
All right, so the legal battle continues.
It does.
And what did the Court of Appeals have to say about all of this?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Oh, boy. I can't wait to hear about it.
We'll have to save that for next time, though.
All right, cliffhanger. I guess we'll have to tune in for part 2.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
So last time we were talking about Eusebio appealing that huge fine to the Court of Appeals.
Right, right.
What happened there?
Well, it seemed like he might actually catch a break.
Really?
Yeah, the Court of Appeals actually reduced the fine a lot.
Oh, wow. So they didn't agree with the CSC's original penalty.
Yeah, it seems like they felt the CSC might have gone a little overboard with the fine.
Interesting. So how much did they lower it to?
They brought it down to P30,000 totalo.
Okay, so still a significant amount, but way less than the original.
Definitely a big difference.
So what was their reasoning behind lowering the fine?
They basically questioned whether the CSC actually had the authority to impose such a large penalty in the first place.
Huh. Interesting. So it's like a power struggle between the Court of Appeals and the CSC.
Yeah, kinda. The Court of Appeals is saying, hey, you can't just hand out these huge fines without considering the regular court system.
That makes sense. So where does Tirona fit into all of this? Well, the courts are arguing about the fines and stuff.
That's a good point. This whole legal battle is going on, and she's still waiting to be reinstated.
Right. It must have been so frustrating for her.
Absolutely. Just imagine the impact this had on her professionally and personally.
Yeah, she was appointed to this position, then it was unjustly taken away, and now she's stuck in limbo while the courts decide what to do with the guy who wouldn't reinstate her.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the legal back and forth, but it's important to remember the human impact of this case.
Absolutely. So, did the Court of Appeals address Tarona's situation at all in their decision?
Well, their focus was mainly on the fine, but the fact that they upheld the CSC's order for her reinstatement is significant.
Right, so they're still saying Eusebio has to give her back her job.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that the CSC's initial decision was correct and that Eusebio was in the wrong.
So at this point, it seems like maybe things are finally going Tarona's way. Eusebio has to reinstate her, even though he got a smaller fine case closed.
Not so fast. The CSC wasn't done yet.
Right?
Remember, they're a constitutional body, and they felt very strongly about upholding their authority.
So they didn't just accept the Court of Appeals decision.
Nope. They decided to appeal it to the Supreme Court.
Wow. So this case is going all the way to the top.
That's right. It's not just about the fine anymore. It's about who has the final say.
This is getting intense.
Yeah.
What exactly did the Supreme Court have to decide?
They had to figure out the extent of the CSC's power. Could they, as a constitutional body, set their own rules and penalties for contempt? Or did they have to follow the limits set by the regular courts?
So the Supreme Court's decision would have a big impact on future cases involving the CSC.
Absolutely. This was a major decision with far-reaching consequences.
So what was the final verdict? Did the Supreme Court agree with the Court of Appeals or the CSC?
Drum roll, please. The Supreme Court reinstated the original P416,210 fine.
Whoa. They sided with the CSC completely. That's a huge win for them.
It is, and a major setback for Eusebio.
So why did the Supreme Court decide to go with the original fine?
They emphasized the importance of upholding the rule of law and respecting the authority of constitutional bodies.
Okay.
They said the CSC had the power to make its own rules and regulations, including those about contempt.
So they're basically saying the CSC needs to be able to enforce its decisions.
Exactly. If they couldn't, what would be the point of having a civil service commission?
Right. Their orders would be meaningless if people could just ignore them.
Exactly.
But still, some people might say that a P416,000.0 fine is a bit much.
True. But you have to consider the context.
Okay.
This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a deliberate and sustained refusal to comply with a court order for over a year.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't just a simple oversight.
The Supreme Court was sending a message that defying the CSC has serious consequences.
And it wasn't really about the money. It was about the principle of the matter.
Right. It was about respecting the authority of the courts and ensuring that the CSC could do its job properly.
So in the end, Eusebio's decision to ignore the CSC completely backfired.
Big time. He ended up having to pay the full fine, and this case set a precedent for how these kinds of situations would be handled in the future.
It's a fascinating case.
Sure.
So what does this whole thing tell us about the balance of power between local governments and the Civil Service Commission?
It shows that the CSC has a lot of power and authority as a constitutional body.
Okay.
Even elected officials, like mayors, have to follow their rulings.
So no one is above the law.
Exactly. The Supreme Court made it clear that the CSC's authority needs to be respected to ensure a fair and efficient civil service system.
It's kind of like a David and Goliath story with Tirona, this dedicated educator, going up against this powerful mayor who was determined to get rid of her.
I like that analogy. What do you think we can learn from her experience?
I think it shows that it's important to stand up for what you believe in, even when it seems impossible.
And to have faith in the legal system, even when things seem stacked against you.
It took years, but justice prevailed in the end.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have the right to fight for what we believe in.
Exactly. All right, so we've been throwing around some legal terms here, like contempt of court. What does that actually mean?
Well, contempt of court, it's basically anything you do that disrespects the court or stops it from doing its job, like
Right.
obstructing
So like
justice.
yelling at the judge or something.
Yeah, that's a classic example. Or refusing to comply with a court order like what Eusebio did.
So basically, ignoring a court order is like saying, I don't care what you decide.
Exactly, it's a big deal. And the court doesn't take it lightly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about the punishments for contempt of court?
It really depends on the situation.
Yeah.
You know how bad the contempt was and what the judge decides?
Okay.
It could be a warning or a reprimand or fines or even jail time.
Oh, wow. So it can be pretty serious.
Yeah, it is. And then we also talked about the CSC's authority being upheld in this case.
Right. What exactly is administrative law?
It's basically the set of rules that governs government agencies.
Like the CSE.
Exactly. It makes sure that these agencies operate within the law and don't abuse their power.
So the Supreme Court was basically saying that the CSE was totally justified in ordering Tarona's reinstatement and fining Eusebio.
Yep. They were acting within their authority as defined by administrative law.
And that brings us to the separation of powers.
Yeah.
How did that play into this case?
Oh, the separation of powers is a big one. It's like the foundation of our government.
Yeah, but how did it actually affect Eusebio?
Well, it's all about keeping the different branches of government in check.
Well,
You've got the legislative branch, which makes the laws, the executive branch, which enforces the laws, and the judicial branch, which interprets the laws.
right. And they all have their own roles and responsibilities.
Exactly. And they're not supposed to interfere with each other.
So in this case, you have the executive branch represented by Eusebio, the mayor,
Yeah.
then the judicial branch,
Yeah.
the courts, and then the CSE, which is kind of its own thing.
Yeah, it's an independent constitutional body.
And the Supreme Court had to make sure that everyone stayed in their lane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about maintaining that balance of power.
Wow, this case really touches on so many important aspects of our legal system. It's amazing how it all connects.
It is. And speaking of connecting, another key legal principle here is the immutability of judgment.
What does that mean?
It means that once a court's decision is final, it can't be changed.
Oh, so there's no going back.
Basically, there are a few exceptions, but for the most part, what the court decides is final.
So even if someone suddenly remembers a key piece of evidence or comes up with a brilliant new argument, too late.
Too late. The judgment stands.
It really highlights how important it is to get everything right the first time.
Absolutely. You got to bring your A game to court because you might not get a second chance.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It's been a wild ride, right?
Yeah.
From a simple appointment to a massive legal battle with huge fines and constitutional questions.
Yeah, it's crazy how much we've learned about the Philippine legal system just from this one case.
And it all started with someone refusing to follow a court order.
It just goes to show that you never know where a legal case will lead you. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Exactly. And sometimes what you find underneath can be pretty surprising.
Well, I think we've reached the core of this legal onion.
I think so too.
And wow, it's been quite a journey.
It really has.
This case has been a fascinating deep dive into the complexities of the Philippine legal system. We've learned about everything from contempt of court and administrative law to the separation of powers and the importance of respecting court decisions.
And we've seen how these principles can have a real impact on people's lives.
If you're interested in learning more about the law and how it shapes our world, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more thought-provoking discussions and explorations of fascinating legal cases. We'll be back soon with another intriguing deep dive. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, stay curious.